back to the Empowered Intuitive Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Henderson, and with me is my beautiful co-host, Petra Costa from When Magic Awakes. She's bringing out her third book very soon. Get on that. If you haven't read the series, look at the picture behind her. Today, we are talking about personality profiling.
Oh, what a subject.
What a subject. There is so many forms of personality quizzes and profiling and things that you can do on the internet or, you know, in a bloody Mary Claire magazine or whatever the kids do these days. I remember sitting in the library doing all the quizzes in the Dolly magazines or whatever, being like, that's you. And I'm like, really, is it? Like, being not happy with my result because I just knew it was, you know, totally not me, even though it probably was. But so there's no shortage of personality quizzes you can take today to get a little bit of knowledge on yourself. But how accurate are they? And how relatable are the archetypes that they put forward?
Well, this is the thing. It's not as if we haven't had a form of personality profiling back from the beginning of time in terms of zodiacs and attributing, you know, different personality traits to those. Even when we were looking into humorism, obviously, and it had the personality traits linked to the different facets of its system. We've always done it, but we've now selling it as almost a science when it's only a pseudoscience. Like, let's be real. But we're not. We're selling it, and businesses are spending millions and millions of dollars on actually having people come in to assess their employees, etc., in a work environment. So
yes.
I'm going to give you, so it's personality profiling is a means of measuring an individual's personality in a particular situation. It is often referred to as psychometric testing or psychological profiling. They are paying big dollars. This is one of the only subjects that we've done in this podcast when I was talking about pre-podcast, and my husband's gone, oh, hang on a minute. I've had that done when I was working at this, organization and this organization, and he came out with a thing this thick where had to do a 2-day course so that they could all be profiled.
Wow.
And I'm like,
that's full on.
It was crazy. And I said to him, well, which one did you get done? Because there's lots of different ones out there. The ones people I think know about the most is the Myers Briggs type indicator system. He didn't have that one done. He had the DISC assessment done, which I'll go into later.
So I've never heard of either of those prior to now, so maybe they're a bit before my time.
Well, they're still being used. If you go, they're still being used today as the major form of when you get one of these, you know, external consultants in to talk about how to get the most out of your team in a work environment and all of that kind of stuff. There's still the two major ones that are brought into play. I've heard about the Myers-Briggs one more from just people sending it on Facebook and it being like a little thing, do the quiz. And very similar to, do the quiz to find out what your spirit animal is.
Right. Like, I literally was just thinking of that, like, what crystal should you use? And based on all the, and it's funny you say that because a lot of those quizzes are based on like generalized data and use language that can be relatable to anyone, which is something that we've talked about in the past. Like there's a literal term for it.
Yeah. And this is where it's funny because they know where they want to pigeonhole you when they're doing these things, right? So let's be real about this. This is about locking you into certain or defining where you are on spectrums.
Yes.
So we'll look at I'm going to go to the Myers-Briggs one a little bit because I've got a lot of condemnation for this one in a very, very strong way. And I've got to say, this subject arced me up. It arced me up a lot because the concept of the Myers-Briggs one that came on, it was constructed by two Americans, Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers, and they were inspired by the book of our beautiful mate Carl Jung's work
Oh,
on
Carl.
all of the, archetypes, but he also had his own idea of personality profiling.
Yeah, yep, yes.
These two people, who are completely untrained in any way at all, they have no
Yeah.
psychiatry, analytical psychiatry background or psychological background, nothing. But they just decided Jung,
They're trained
you
in psychology.
they're in nothing. And basically what they did was they said, oh, his work's a little bit complicated. People aren't going to really understand it. So we're going to simplify it and make it more understandable. And then it became this huge thing because it was based on Jung's work, right? So that gave them credibility. The main theme of this whole thing, if anyone's done it, you answer a whole series of questions, which are basically trying to define between 5 different personality traits. And the personality traits come down to whether you're introverted or extroverted or things
Did
like
you
that.
send me this quiz to do?
Yeah, we both.
I think I've got the screenshot. So I'll find them and keep talking.
Yeah, so the what it tests between, it's like a binary value that tests between the categories of whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you use sensing or you use intuition, whether you use thinking or feeling, or you're judging or perceiving. So these things now, like most of us use a combination of those and sit like pretty much dead center in a lot of those things. Like I think I'm highly intuitive, but to say that I would ignore all of the sensory input that's coming my way
just
because of
solely
intuition.
relying on it.
Like if I'm like, no, I'm weighing up both, and same thing with thinking or feeling. I'm highly.
I found when I was answering the questions and it's like strongly agree or strongly disagree, like I'm more likely to sort of stay in the middle because unless I'm like, oh yeah, I'm flat out like that, but I'm just like, oh, I can be like that, but I wouldn't say it's a default setting.
Yes, yes. And that's what I found. I actually found with a lot of the questions, I was like, it's the same freaking question you asked
they were
3
the
times
same
ago.
thing. And I'm like, are you trying to reword it to get a different aspect?
It's like those questions on morality, does one person's life weigh more than another? And if you had one person you had to kick out of a lifeboat, is that okay? But if you were saving 20 people, it's still a question of morality.
Yeah.
What annoyed me on this one was most times I wanted to answer the question, this is a fucking stupid question. And they didn't
Please
have
ask
that.
me something relevant. Yeah.
They didn't have it. But for the purpose of just of, giggles, we both did it. Yeah. And I came out unexpectedly as a commander.
Oh, no way.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it?
So I got an ENTJ personality type. Commanders are natural-born leaders, embodying the gifts of charisma and confidence. ENTJs project authority in a way that draws sticks.
Commander Costa on the scene.
It's a little bit in my heritage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Draws crowds together. It's a common goal. However, these personalities are also characterized by often ruthless levels of rationality.
No.
And it goes on and on and on to go.
We're going to see a little bit of that today, I think.
Well, so I'm efficient, I'm energetic, I'm confident, and all that things. And what I think is and annoys me in this is because in any time of these personality tests, quizzes, or whatever, I always come out as being an extrovert.
Yes, I literally am just looking at that result.
And I am so nervous when it comes to, social interaction and being with people. I still, as a grown-ass woman, will blush if more than 2 or 3 people look at me at once in a social setting.
This actually brings up a good point, right? Because I got the campaigner, ENFPT. So I'm kind of like the PR person, I think, in that sense, which makes sense. Campaigners are enthusiastic, creative, sociable, free spirits who can always find a reason to smile. And then it's like, and I'm like,
go you.
That makes me sound really fucking positive. But I can tell you now, it's because I mask really well. And that's going to be around to my point in a minute. But the energy, the extroverted, introverted, I literally got 51% extroverted, 49% introverted. And I'm like, that's in the middle. Like, that's pretty much an ambivert. That just means I could go either way. It doesn't necessarily mean I readily enjoy group activities and value social interaction.
Yep.
And the thing is because these personality quizzes, like, who's taking them? Everybody. There's lots of people who might not relate to other people in a normative way because they're on, like, the spectrum. They're neurodivergent, like myself, ADHD, autistic. And we have had to teach ourselves over years to be extroverted or to be able to talk to people, and it's called masking. Like, we have to blend in, but at the end of the day, we go home and we're fucked. We're overstimulated. We're thinking about everything on repeat. Our brains, like, do not shut off. So for me to go out and be like, so even after a market and stuff like that, you know, to be super social, to be looking people in the eye, to be talking to them with confidence and things, these are all things I've had to develop over years consciously, because naturally my basic instinct is to go hide in a toy box and eat apples, or climb the nearest tree and get the fuck away from everybody.
Exactly.
You know? So that type of thing, like, brings up a little bit of a flaw in these personality testings.
Well, yes, and this I was actually quite conflicted about, because I was thinking to myself, if this is based on the Jungian topology, typology, how could he have got it so wrong? Because we know Carl doesn't get things wrong, right? He's always bang on, and this is where I got angry, because Carl Jung was very, 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 very clear, and I've got numerous quotes that I won't go through them all. His version of being an extrovert and an introvert is completely different. He was the first person who coined the phrase. He was the first person that understood it as a psychological difference. But his view on it is not about an extrovert isn't just the life of the party and someone's like, look at me, look at me. It's not like that.
Look at me.
It is basically, if you're introverted, is you look into self for answers.
Yes,
so you
as
look
opposed
inward,
to external validation.
Exactly.
I love that. Yeah.
And that's where he came from. So he was talking about it in a completely, and we've, again, as we bastardize so many things, we come along, we see the word, we think we understand, we don't bother to read, or we do read it and we go, oh, Carl, but you're complicating it, and the common man
we
won't be able to understand that.
water down the essence instead of taking it on and actually trying to understand and integrate that a bit.
I cannot remember. There was a great mind that said at one point in time, and I can't remember who it was, but if you simplify something enough, it becomes incorrect. Like,
I love
you literally,
yes.
And I cannot remember who says it, and they say it way better than that, but
probably fucking Plato or something.
Probably one of them. But now the point of this, so Jung didn't believe that. And Jung's method of doing this, he was very, very, very clear in saying the fact that this is not a method of categorization. It is absolutely opposite of a method of categorization. What it is a method of understanding how people might react in certain situations based on these questions. And he was a advocate believer in the concept that you could not do a quiz to find this out. It needed to be, people needed to be sat down, talked to, and properly diagnosed with different things. And I say diagnosed because that sounds like it's a condition. He was completely not about sticking labels on people. Like, I've got it here. It is not a psychonomic and not an anthropological system, but a critical psychological dealing with the organization. But in no sense to stick labels on people. Like, they were his exact words. Don't stick labels on people. And I'm a commander. So I would suggest that someone didn't read that bit of the text when they were putting those names on it. But the interesting thing is he thought it was more a cycle. So he was using it in terms of understanding where you are now and understanding what you can use and what you can do to balance yourself out and find your ways to move around your own personality to know where your weak point strengths are. So, Carl, you got it right. And everybody else that's come along since then has just literally bastardized it, in my view.
I love that, because that's one of the things that I sort of thought while I was looking at this stuff, is that a lot of people, and we see it in astrology and stuff like that, right? A lot of people just take these labels, titles, personality traits, whatnot, and they treat it as the absolute be all end all of their personality. Like,
it's in my nature.
It's in my nature, and it's written in the stars, so it must be what it is. I cannot change. And it's like, that's not how it's supposed to be interpreted. Like Carl said, it's a gateway to understanding yourself a bit better and facilitating change where it's illuminated that it needs to happen, or you feel it needs to happen, through better understanding yourself and what motivates you and what doesn't motivate you, and how your brain works and how you think. We have the absolute capacity to change how our brain works and how we think. Like I said, I've spent so many years of my life training myself to be able to talk like I am now to people, to be relatable, to blend in, to better myself in society. So this whole, this is just me and there's no changing that's a cop-out. That's bypassing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like using an excuse. Now, one thing I did find in all of this, if you actually dig a lot deeper into these this personality profiling, it's not just as being an INTJ or whatever the dickens the letters are. It also breaks it down in, by certain letter combinations, puts you in different roles. Either you're more like an analyst role, a diplomatic role, a sentient role, an explorer. So it talks about that, the fact, and that's just looking at 2 factors. This is where it becomes a little bit more helpful, where it's actually saying, by these two, not just saying these 4 letters makes me a commander, but by the fact that I'm more sensing and more judgmental, I'm more likely to be observant of things, etc. And they also go further, if you really start digging down, in giving you strategies. So if you're certain types, they can say, okay, you're a confident individual. These are the strategies that you can use to achieve goals, etc., based on how you're tracking with answering these questions at this point in time.
Yes.
Now
exactly.
that I'm like going, okay, that's giving me something that I can work with, rather than just a stereotype.
That you made a point there about like being commander or whatever, and everybody having these roles. And the other thing that sticks out for me in that, which will come up in like another little personality profiling, is a hierarchy of the roles. Like in like a sort of inferred hierarchy. It's like, oh, well, you're a commander and you're a campaigner, and yes, everyone has their role in society, but I can't help but automatically feel that there is some sort of level of one is better than the other, or one is more special and unique than the other.
It's got a little bit of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in this, in relation. It's like, these are the ones we need to keep. Like, when they're like, it's like when you're watching any of those movies where the asteroid's just about to hit or something's about to happen and we have to work out who to save. Like, who goes into the underground cave system?
The island. Yeah, there was a movie on Netflix that I watched that was like that, and it was like kids having a hypothetical on who they would save, if the world was going to end, the apocalypse was going to happen. And it was like, the physicists, the doctors, because it was all important roles on how to preserve and save society. But I loved the end. I wish I could remember what it was called. But at the end of the movie, she was like, well, the math is simple. The earth is fucked. There's no way we're going to be able to rehabilitate ourselves in such a short amount of time with so little people. It's just not going to happen. So I would preserve the artists, the musicians, the people who I can have community with and have quality of end of life. And I was like,
nice.
I love that. I love that you put value on those people as opposed to who could be more practical, which really speaks to our society, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And it's sort of like, you can learn physics and engineering, etc., from a book if you've got a brain that can handle it, right? When we and Stephen King does this in The Stand, where yes, you do need your engineers to quickly get there, but you need your tradespeople more, because the tradespeople can learn the engineering, but the engineer might not be able to know how to fix something. He often has this discussion about the different personality types. And I think with that thing with the artists, is there an artist in here? I'm just looking. Is there any artist? Well, we got a virtuoso.
Well, yeah, there's.
I'm actually looking at we've got, architect, logician, commander, debater, advocate, mediator, protagonist, campaigner. I don't know what the difference between those two is. A logistician. Okay, one's got logic with IAN on the end, and the other one has got logistic with IAN. People pronounce them how they're supposed to be pronounced. Defender, executive, consul, virtuoso, adventurer,
I feel like there's room to be creative and virtuoso and stuff within those categories as well. Like it's not so cut and dry.
Some of our greatest minds, our greatest scientists, our greatest polymaths, our greatest whatever, or also some of our greatest spiritualists, and our greatest artists.
Yeah.
It's only in modern time that we have forced people to try to pick which one they're going to be,
it
to the detriment.
It comes down to what we value more, like, we don't really need that. We need someone who's going to be able to build 60 plus houses in a day, and it becomes devalued and like up to the point where we leave it up to AI to make our culture for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no.
I'm just saying, even in among, and this is one of the things that I got really riled up about, is when I was trying to pop these things into a Word document so I could quickly reference them. There is so many people doing their own interpretation of these things. So some of them it says if you're an ISTP, you're a crafter, and other people call that the virtuoso. We do have one. When I look at it, I've just found one. The adventurer is also the artist in another person's definition. Right. So it's just and I have no problem with people putting their own spin on it, but I would appreciate people telling me they're putting their own spin on it.
Yeah, as opposed to just putting it forward as this is what it says.
As if this is what it was originally written as.
So I've got ENFPT next to my campaigner.
Trying to find it.
And I'm not sure what that means, but it was funny enough because
the T and the A at the end.
Just a T at the end.
Yeah. It comes down to whether I did have this written down because I asked it, because you can either get an A or you get a T.
Well, I got T.
They're the two letters, and I think it comes down to being fudge cakes. I had this highlighted.
I did this quiz with like my mum took it actually. And I wish I'd screenshot her results. I don't have them, but I think she got like commander or something as well. And it was like, You're very detail orientated. You think do it now and do it good and all this sort of shit. And it was very on point for her, because that is what she's like. She just gets in, she does it. Like there's a system.
Apparently, I'm just looking here. I think I found it. They're either the A is if you're assertive, and the T is if you're turbulent.
What does it mean by turbulent?
It then goes on to sanitize it a little bit and make it sound like it
doesn't. Not
a
diss. Yeah,
exactly. It's like
okay.
I think all it means by that is you're probably a little bit more dynamically flexible in terms of not just having to have it like that. Whereas I think the commander is just like,
it did say that I was non-conforming, which I would agree with. So I'll take that. I'll take that as a compliment.
Because I think my one, I had an A, so I think that just means that I'm just like, it's my way or the highway, and everybody gets on board, or they don't. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, what did you want to go with next? Because I've got
another. Okay, well, let's do a quick one. Actually, no, let's go back to, I can't find those screenshots. Let's go back to the personality profiling with the humorism.
Yep.
Because this is probably one of the ones that I was like actually made the most sense for me when I discovered it. Oh, bless you, playing with stickers. my toddler is a commander, but she's also an adventurer, and she's turbulent. And I don't mean that in the goes with the flow way. I mean that is in the a fucking hurricane. So I found this. I came across this in a really weird way. It was the only takeaway from a certain experience, which I'll have to talk about at later date when we do a thing on cults. Leave that
writing that down. We have to do a thing on
we
cults.
have to do a thing on cults, because this was I very much came across this in that type of setting. But the book itself, Personality Plus by Florence Latour, is how to understand others by understanding yourself. And it speaks to 4 personality types. And in the book, it's like you can have traits of each 4. And it's based on the different traits in humorism. So you've got the popular sanguine, the perfect melancholy, the powerful choleric, and the peaceful phlegmatic. And there's a list of traits, like you do your personality profile, there's strengths, and then there's weaknesses, and you have to tick which you think apply to you. And then you do the quiz next door, or next page, and which goes weaknesses and strengths, but it categorizes it into each of those categories.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I found this interesting because when I did it, which was when I was in uni, so I'd finished school, I'd taken a gap year, I was in uni, quite a young person. I was sure of myself, but not so sure of myself. Like, I definitely can see the growth from then to now in certain things, and I can tell by the way that I'd marked the quiz, because there was lots that was unchecked. Yep. This time at the end of it, I turned out to be a perfect melancholy and a peaceful phlegmatic. They were my 2 top ones. This time when I did it, I ticked a lot more of the qualities. So I had like the black X's are me this time round, and then like the pencil ones were me last time. And so like in the section of powerful sanguine, I had like barely any like marks, but this time I've actually got quite a few.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so, and I think it just shows to show that I know myself better now than I did back then. So that the level of self-gnosis is going to impact your results. I still marked my top trait as being a perfect melancholy and peaceful phlegmatic. And just to give you an idea of what that is. So a popular sanguine in this personality profiling is an extrovert, the talker, the optimist. So they're appealing, they're the life of the party, good sense of humor, memory for color, holds attention, emotional and demonstrative, enthusiastic. Like they're just the life, right? We can all think of someone who's like that. And then perfect melancholy, so the introvert, the thinker, the pessimist. Deep, thoughtful, analytical, serious and purposeful, genius prone, talented, creative, artistic or musical, philosophical, appreciative of beauty, sensitive to others, self-sacrificing, conscientious, and idealistic. And then it goes on to have like as a parent, at work, as a friend.
Yep.
Like it goes into different aspects of that. And then you've got the choleric, which is an extrovert, the doer, the optimist. Yep. So you've got 2 that are like sort of the optimist, they're more active, they're more out there. And then you've got the 2 which are more introverted. The phlegmatic is introvert, the watcher, the pessimist. And it's low-key, easygoing, relaxed, calm and cool, collected, patient, well-balanced, consistent life, quiet but witty, sympathetic and kind, keeps emotions hidden, happily reconciled to life, all-purpose person. And when I read those 2, I'm like, yeah, I would say I'm like that generally. But then, I actually got more choleric traits this time around, which was born leader, dynamic, active, compulsive need for change, must correct wrongs, strong-willed, decisive, unemotional, not easily discouraged, independent, self-sufficient, exudes confidence, can run anything. So I would say me getting more of those traits this time around, as opposed to just being a melancholy phlegmatic, is that I've obviously built more resilience over time. I've become more decisive over time. Back in the day, it would be a struggle for me to make a decision on something. And it's something that I've had to actively work on. So I really liked how when I did this quiz, it reflected that.
Yeah, and that's what's beautiful about these, because you want them to show a level of evolution.
Yeah.
Like, surely we don't want to just be stagnant beings that have no evolution. We don't move, we don't change. Our experiences move us on. I find this interesting because you know how much I love humorism, and like it's a thing for me. And for people to remember this goes back a long way ago. Hippocrates was the one that was most famous for having some play in this.
We spoke about it in our last podcast episode. So
absolutely.
Go and listen to that.
Have a look into it, because some of these things are fascinating in terms of how, with all of those personality traits, they're also linked to times of the year. They're linked to elements. They're linked to alchemy in terms of how the alchematic wheel turns. So it is very interesting when you look at it from that point of view. And we're not going to make this one on humorism, because I could go on about humorism for about 3 hours and never stop. But I did find some of these that were linked to really ancient systems I aligned with a lot more strongly than the ones that were the more new vogue ones. Like, I found the new vogue ones pissed me off, I've got to be honest. Like, there's the next one I'm going to go into, it's called the Big Five. The Big Five.
The Big Five. What is
And just by the fact that they feel that they've got to call it the Big Five, or it's the ocean model. Okay.
It sounds very narrow already, but let's entertain it for a minute.
I don't know why I think Ocean's 11 as soon as I hear that, but I kind of do. And that just annoys me even more. But anyway, basically this is about personality traits, and it comes down, the ocean stands for open to experience, and this is about a sliding scale. So it's about where you are on a sliding scale.
Okay.
So you need to define yourself as whether you're open to experience, whether you're conscientious, whether you're extrovert, again, whether you have a level of agreeableness. And then neuroses, just general neuroses. And what they sort of like mean, just to explain what they mean. Open to experience is someone that's inventive and curious, as opposed to someone who's a bit cautious and is more consistent. So like, you'd have your adventure on one end and you'd have more stoic person down the other end. Conscientiousness, you're efficient, you're organized. They say that the opposite of conscientiousness is extravagance and carelessness. And I'm like, I can be extravagant, but
that denotes a little bit of moral judgment as well, doesn't it? It's like, you're a bit extravagant.
You're a bit extravagant, and you're careless.
Tone it down a little. You're offending us. Our simple people are offended by your extravagance. Like, put the feather fan away.
They have the same definition in relation to extroversion as whether you're outgoing and energetic, or you're solitary or reserved. I hate to be a person that just doesn't like people but has huge amounts of energy. Like, they do exist, everybody. Like, it's not just everybody that is a little bit introverted, just sits in a corner wanting to read a book because they just, you know what I mean? It's just, sometimes people are a bit scared of people.
That brings up something actually I've just thought about as you said that. A lot of people don't know how to regulate themselves. And this is something that we work on with, like, our daughter regularly, because there's a big thing, and even in like the biodanza class that I go to, there's a thing of self-regulation. If you feel physically you need a break, emotionally you need a break, you go do that. You tone it down, you listen to what your body and mind need, and you adhere to that. And a lot of people, and like I was saying before, if I go out and into a crowd of people and now I'm exhausted, well, it's on me to regulate that. To be like, to turn around and be like, I've been invited to this. I really don't have the energy or the social stamina. Instead of burning myself out, I'm going to stay home. and recoup and take care of my well-being.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, oh, if you're not out there and partying all the time, there must be something wrong. Like, you know, you're introverted and shy. It's like, no, maybe I just have good self-regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe I just manage stuff better. Like
Yeah. Maybe I'm really conscious about my
or as you said
energy
before,
expenditure and I just don't want to be around dickheads.
yes. Oh God, I hear that. And that's what you were saying before. You're talking about masking,
Yeah.
and I call sometimes for me it's faking it. Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. Sometimes you're in a certain situation, and you have to act like this is just like you are a fish in this is your environment. Like I go to these book fairs, and my husband always goes, "Oh, you're really in your element," and I go, "I am
I'm
sweating buckets.
so
I am."
not. Yeah.
I am so sweating trying to make
But
sure that I don't come
I'm
across,
glad you think I am.
and I'm glad it looks that way because that's what I'm trying to present.
Yeah.
But internally, I'm literally like going, God, can someone? I need a Coke.
Yeah.
I
Get me
really
out
need
of
a
here. Yeah.
The other ones in relation to this is agreeableness, and again, like you were saying, it sounds like there's a good or bad because that is friendly and compassionate versus critical and judgmental. Tell me people aren't going to answer.
Right. That's
Tell me
interesting.
people.
I thought it was going to go like the people pleaser route.
No, and this is what I find is interesting. If you're answering these questions, how many people are going to honestly say, no, you know what? I'm not going to take the friendly
Yes.
option. I'm going to give you the fuck you option. How many people are
Yeah.
literally going to honestly answer or have the actual self-awareness to
Yes.
realize they are a fuck you personality?
But
Like,
actually, that
like
makes
I know I've got
that's
fuck you in you, but I
yes.
think I'm also friendly and
Yeah,
compassionate.
exactly. But that exactly actually does touch on the people pleaser aspect because a lot of people turn around and go, well, if that was me, I'd just tell them to go get fucked. And then the situation
No, you wouldn't.
and then the situation happens and they're all like, oh, well, you know, like, you know, and I'm like, you fucking basis bitch.
That's the thing. We have lost this.
You
There should
talk
have to be,
such shit.
Taylor, we have to invent a personality profile that basically is
Oh,
what we would call a bullshit meter,
oh
so that
my God.
you
Like
can measure your own.
that's on the same level as our oracle the cards because a lot of people turn around to me and they're like, yo, I get told off all the time. Like, me too, don't worry.
Oh goodness, the last one on this is neuroticism, and you're either sensitive or nervous versus resilient and confident. Again,
Again, sliding spectrum. I feel
it
like
is,
I
and I
am
get that it's got to
both at the
be that
same
way.
time. Yeah,
So
yeah.
this one is basically trying to define your personality, your temperament, and your psyche.
Mm.
There are global factors, blah blah blah, and they make a very very strong point here to say these traits are not black or white. And I'm looking at it going,
It
it
sounds
kind of
pretty
is.
black or
You might have
white.
the grey
Yeah,
scale in
yeah,
between, but if you
yeah.
by definition, if you're saying one is inventive and one is cautious,
Mm.
I gotta say that's kind of giving me black or white vibes.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
acknowledging that there's grey in between, sure, but
But your
if you,
white looks a little muddied by that black, don't you think? Got a bit of soot there on your soul.
oh, it's just a bit harsh. I could go on more in this one in terms of that. Look, God, I've got so much information on this, and all it comes down is to exactly what you'd expect every one of these things. You basically break it down. You can be a little bit cranky, or you can be a little bit sociable, and you're a little bit this. I think this one is one of the most stupid ones that I read about, and I feel really bad because one of the people that helped to invent this was a person whose surname is Costa, and it just made me feel. It made me feel. Costa and McRae invented this one, and I just want it is trying to not be. It's trying to be more
no relation of Petra's.
no relation,
Now
no
we've got to make
affiliation,
a personality profiling thing to redeem the name.
no affiliation to that at all. But that is the 5-factor model or the ocean model.
Right. You know, and in our personality profiling, we're going to have like your results. Oh, you're 60% sooty. Which means you're not a cunt all the time, but you definitely can be.
the other thing of sooty? Can it be sort of like your halo slipped a little bit?
Yeah, yeah,
It just seems
yeah.
like a lot of these are very
Are you
like it's
nocturnal?
almost like
Because you
virtues.
are a creature of
What's the
the night.
opposite of virtue? A virtue versus a sin. It almost is like
Yes,
what these things. And I was
yes.
like, oh, you've got. It does seem very
Like
black, white, very good, bad.
that moral factor. Yes.
100%. Okay,
Mm.
you go.
Well, let's
The
take a
turn,
little bit of a different route.
please, because
So
so these
actually, it kind
pseudoscience. I'm
yeah,
just going to say these
yeah,
pseudosciences, the ones that are supposed to be scientific, are really letting us down, in my opinion.
yeah,
Apart from
yeah,
Jung, I was behind Jung 100%, but then I always reread
yeah,
because he's my boy.
yeah, yeah. Well, his shadow archetypes are quite interesting, and you know they fit into a lot of other psychological stuff that he talked about.
Yep.
But I was having a look through again when I was in university after I just got married. I was given another book, The Five Love Languages, which
Actually love this one.
yeah, I love the book. I loved reading about how it applies to people in their life and how they're getting to know themselves and know their partners. Because a lot of these tests are just about us, right? They're about how we relate to the world. It's very egocentric. But then you get something like this, it just takes one little aspect of who we are. And I think it really highlights the fact that as opposed to, you know, just having a personality profile where it describes your traits, this is like more of a deeper insight as us as
Yes.
multifaceted beings, right? So
Yes.
the five love languages.
Yeah, because I think with the love languages, and I'm only meant jumping in now because you're about to list them off.
Yes, yes.
It's not just about how you react with your loved ones or your partner. If you actually think about it with a different lens, it actually often is how you interact with just humanity in
with
general.
just people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally just showing how you care and showing
Yep.
how you like to be cared for, you
Okay,
know,
go.
receiving love. And there's different variations of this book, like, you know, five love languages for men, five love languages for children, five love languages for teenagers, singles. Like they've chopped this up into bits and pieces to make understanding, because this is just very much couple based. And like you said, you know, facets of how we interact with the world, right? So we've got love languages, words of affirmation, which I really should have bookmarked like the actual freaking pages for this. But words of affirmation is pretty much just you like verbal validation, confirmation.
Yeah, exactly.
Communication is something you really value that comes through in speech or written word or expressions. You know, maybe art, stuff like that, like visual auditorial confirmations of love. And
it could be as simple as you value someone saying good job.
Yes, exactly.
It can just be something as simple as that. That's what. And there's a lot of people out there, and I know that sounds weird. Wouldn't everybody like that? There are some people that really don't give a shit about hearing whether it's a good job or not, because they are
exactly.
they're so about getting the job done, and they know they've done a good job.
Yeah,
they don't need you to tell them it's a good job. They actually can find that a bit condescending.
And yes, exactly. And I admittedly, I'm probably one of those people, because I'm all like, oh, you can tell me how proud you are and stuff like that, but like your actions don't meet your words, you know. Or it's like, or it feels, if you've grown up in places where people, you know, abuse, trauma, things like that, compliments and things are almost always backhanded, no matter how or who says it to you. It's like, okay, what's coming after that, you know?
This is one of my big ones. I like people to say good job.
Do you?
If I dish up a dinner, if I dish up a meal, I'm like this. I'm just like waiting, right? And Brandon just sits there and he just like,
give me the cookie.
He just sighs as if to say, Mum, it's great. It's great.
Yeah,
But he'll see that I'm actually waiting. I'm barely eating my own dinner because I'm just watching everyone's faces, just waiting for someone to say, this is delicious, Petra.
Mark Twain once said, I can live for 2 months on a good compliment.
Twainy, I'm with you.
Okay, what's next? The tongue has the power of life and death. Verbal compliments or words of appreciation are powerful communicators of love. So what's next? What's next is there's my tornado going off in the background. I don't know if you can hear her. Apologies. Quality time. So quality time is pretty much when you go out of your road to plan something with somebody or be with someone, you know, sitting in the room, just enjoying each other's company or whatever. It doesn't have to be extravagant, or it can be as extravagant as you want, but you know, it's just making time for that person, or you making time for the people you love, is another love language. And this is one of my higher ones.
Yep.
I love going, and I think about my family with this type of thing. Like, you know, I love going out and having experiences, and you know, maybe it's going out to my mum's for the day and the kids are just playing in the backyard, or we take a trip to the Bunyas or something like that, or we go to the beach or whatever, and it's like a day where we just all enjoy each other's company and have fun. Like, that's a big one for me. Yep. The next one,
just on that one, I've got a very good friend who says the most precious gift you can give anyone is the gift of your time.
Is the gift of your
and
time.
that is what he values more than anything. And it's just because we are living busy lives.
Yes,
we've
exactly.
all got really busy lives, and sometimes when you can show someone how much they mean to you by your willingness to shift things aside.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you do. It could be just sitting and watching the block.
I think it feeds into one another too. Like, I don't necessarily like the words, but if you take a moment to actually just pause and acknowledge me, that's quality time. You know, I don't need the verbal confirmation of your meal is great, but you know, maybe just
the needy bitch over here does.
Yeah. taking the time to actually be like, you know, engage me, and you know, however that turns out. Like, I'll be uncomfortable with your compliment for a minute, but you took your time out of the day to make sure I knew that.
Yes, and you're 100% correct, because that actually, don't think some interaction only fits one of these different traits, because by taking the time to talk to you about how well they think you've done, to give you a little bit of words of affirmation, people have also given you some quality time as well, even though they are different. So what else we got? So far I've got one of them.
Receiving gifts. So if you're someone who, and can be the way, and the other aspect of this is going to be the way you show love as well. So you might not like receiving gifts, but you might like giving gifts to people. So, which I think it's not one of mine. Although I have come to accept gifts a lot more now than I used to, because again, double-edged sword, like, oh, why are you giving this to me, you know? Receiving gifts, people like to go out and buy shit for people, or it's like a thoughtful little thing that they saw, and they see. I'm more like that. I'm like, I saw this rock and I thought of you. Whereas other people,
exactly. And I think that's where it's not just about, people, I think, sometimes feel a bit apprehensive of saying, oh, yes, no, that's my love language. I love receiving gifts.
Yes, yeah.
That doesn't make them a greedy greedy
there's
person.
A material connotation to it.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets it wrong, because it's more about, know that you understand when someone gives you a gift, especially when it's one that hits the mark. Where my daughter isn't about gifts. But she is about being listened to, which I think is one of them.
Yes, exactly.
So when someone buys a gift because they have listened to what
they've
she
said,
wants, and that's where the gift giving and receiving the gift just blossoms into something wonderful.
Yeah.
Because if someone's actually heard you, for you to say, you know, I really need, and it doesn't matter what it is, I would really love X because I really love Y.
Yeah.
That's where it gets it. So I love receiving a gift when it's really thoughtful. It shows someone knows me, and who doesn't like opening a present? I love opening a present.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not as if I will ever say, if I don't get gifts, you haven't shown me you love me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that.
Yeah. The next one is acts of service.
Yes.
This one is probably is my top one, I think. So if somebody does something to help you out or lighten the load, or, you know, again, you've talked about it and they've gone, I might do that for you. I have the capacity to do that for you, which
Yes.
might be the gifting. Oh, I want to buy that, but I don't have enough money to buy that. Oh, let me do that for you. And
Yep.
that my family is very much acts of service like that. Like I think about my mum and my dad and that. My dad's all like, I'll give you some eggs because I have chooks and you
Yep.
need eggs. So here you go. It's a small gift, but it's also an act of service because now you don't have to go and buy them. Oh,
Yep.
I'll put in for this if you want to do that, you know. Or I will do that. I will help you with that
Yep.
if you need help. And I think I like that because that's
I love it.
action. That shows
It's
me
action.
you're listening.
Because
That shows me you
it
care.
combines
It's
the other things too,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it means you've heard, you've
yeah,
listened,
yeah.
and you've also given the time to do the act of service. I love
Yes,
my
yeah,
way of talking to people and
yeah,
showing that I love them the most is what I do. If anyone ever says, "Oh, I'm not feeling well," or you know, I can't make it to that," or something this has happened, my
yeah.
instant response is, "What can I do to help?
Yes, yeah,
Can I bring some meals around?"
yeah.
I think all of my friends will have heard me say, "Can I bring some meals around?
Can I bring some meals around?
Can I
Yes,
bring?"
you can.
Yes, you
I
can.
love it when my mother-in-law comes up because she always cooks and things. So she just like brings food around. Like gifts for me, definitely food. That's a
Food.
Taurian thing. We'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, like it's a, you know, it's an
It's
act
my
of
way. It's my
service.
way of
Yeah.
showing, and I do that with my family. It's like it's
Yeah.
my way of showing how much I love them, but and especially when I'm cooking, because cooking's my thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I put everything into it, and I want every meal to be. I don't want it just to be food. It needs to be. You need to know
Yeah.
I'm giving you a hug when I'm making that food
Yeah,
because I've thought of you.
it needs to be medicine for your body and soul. I very much
Yeah,
am like that with my cooking, and even, you know, like someone's like, oh, I've got a sore back or something like that. I'm like, oh,
oh,
I can give it a rub, or oh, here, you're feeling a bit dank, I'll give you a smoke cleanse, or I'll do your cards or
yes.
whatever. Like that, that's naturally my go-to.
I'm big on it. So I love
Mm.
acts of service. I like it.
Yeah,
It's my way of speaking to people.
yeah,
So it's my way of saying because I'm not a very emotive person.
mm,
So that's my way.
yeah,
But also I really love it when someone's heard me if I'm struggling and I'm a bit tired. Like I was saying to
yeah,
you
yeah.
earlier in our when we're talking before, I came down the other morning and my husband was cleaning the glass splashback because I really can't reach it. I'm only a short little thing.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh God, you know, it really needs a bit of a scrub." And I come down and it's
Mm.
done. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because I've been listened to,
Yeah.
I've then had not only has he listened, he's then taken the time to do it and doing a job that he probably hates and does not
Hates.
see the value in.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
doesn't see it because the little things that I see on the glass flashback, I can tell you 95% of the world can't see it.
Can't see.
Like
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I say it's dirty, it's like you have to get on
Yeah.
an angle like this with the sun coming in at 2:30 in the afternoon, and then you can see
But
something
it
on
was
there.
enough to bother you. And so, because, you know, he
Yeah.
obviously cares and was listening, decided to clean that for you. And that's actually another caveat of the love languages that he speaks about in this book is that if you know somebody's love language, and then
Yes.
and I think this is really relevant with acts of service, like you've shown you've listened, but only partially, or you're
Yep.
picking and choosing, or you do something half-assed, you're actually telling that person, instead of going, oh, I did this for you, like, you know, being considerate, that you don't care.
Yep.
So that's like another pretty valuable insight when it comes
Yep.
to this type of thing. The last one is physical touch, which I can give or take. I think a younger person, physical touch wasn't so bad. But depending on who you are, but as a mother, I'm like, I don't need everybody touching me all the time. Like, go
Yeah,
away,
because
you know,
you become a
unless you're
human
giving,
couch.
unless, yes, yes. I feel like one of those fucking baboons in the memes where the baby's just like ripping the nipple off the, you know, going to fucking Zimbabwe with it. Yeah.
And I think with this one too, physical touch is interesting because when you talk about it, in terms of couples, it becomes part of a sexuality kind of thing.
An
And it can be
intimacy
a little bit
thing.
distorted there. So I think
Yeah.
for the purposes of this discussion, we'll put that to the side.
Yeah.
I'm a big hugger. No one can come into my house, even like
Oh yeah,
relatively
I love a
random people.
hug. I love a
I'm a
hug.
hug, and I'm like,
Yeah.
come here, hug,
Yeah.
kiss.
I'm
When you come in the
actually a
door.
pretty good hugger. I pride myself on my hugs. Yeah.
There's nothing better than a good hug. It's proven
Yeah.
scientifically,
Yeah.
but again, and I communicate with touch to a level that COVID nearly killed me, because I had to
Yeah.
try to retrain myself to not do what I naturally do.
Yes.
So when I'm communicating with someone, if I want to emphasize a point, I grab their arm. Like I can't, if I, oh,
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
to, and I was still doing that through COVID times, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Petra, you could
Keep
get
your
arrested.
hands to yourself.
Keep
Yeah.
your
See,
little
I'm
hands to
more of a
yourself.
touch person. Is if I'm going into the shop, I'm touching every fucking item on that shelf because I need to. I need to get a read on it. Like that's my stick. If I was a blind person, that's my stick. That's how I see
Yeah,
the world around me. As opposed to like touching other people. If it's something they're comfortable with and that's what they've shown to
yeah,
me, then sure, reciprocate to
yeah.
whatever I'm comfortable with. I'm
But
more like it in the sense of like, oh, you're gonna give me a head massage or a shoulder
yeah,
massage, or you're gonna give my feet a rub, or like that type of therapeutic touch, and hugs. I love hugs.
but
If
I
it's
do
just
not
like,
like being, I don't like being the human couch. Like
yeah,
sometimes when I sit down,
yeah,
I just want to watch TV. I don't want to have someone's feet across my lap,
yeah.
or sometimes you just like, oh, just
Yeah, like
give
just
me a little bit of
get
space.
away from me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just gets a little bit claustrophobic.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think that, this one is the one I think people can work with the most in terms
mm,
of actually
mm,
how they're interacting with people. Like the other one's supposed to be, can you imagine the change it would have if you were in a work environment and they said, let's have a little seminar on love languages, and everyone would roll their eyes and go,
yes.
what are we doing?
What are we
And then you go,
doing?
you need to actually fucking listen. So you know what the acts
Yeah,
of service has got to be,
yeah. Don't, and not that selective hearing bullshit. Not choosing to pick and choose. You got to listen to the whole suggestion and
Yeah.
then decide how you're going to
Where
reciprocate that.
where is words of affirmation not the same?
Affirmation.
Yeah, not the
Mm,
same thing as telling someone in a work environment, I really
yeah,
appreciate your work, I've appreciated the hours you've
yeah,
put in,
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think it's gone unnoticed,
And actually mean it, not
and
just
actually
not just
mean it.
saying it, because you think
Is
Daniel
that
wants
all
to
of
be
them?
told he's a good boy. Yeah, that's all of them.
I thought there was a listening one too, where you have to be heard, because
No, I think
maybe that
that
goes around.
maybe comes into words of affirmation.
Yeah.
Like, you speak something you expect to be heard as opposed to being ignored.
Wow. I find that one really helpful. Can
Hmm,
I jump into one that I came across?
absolutely.
Now this one I lost a lot of time on, because I was like, oh my goodness, I found it. I found the font of all knowledge. I loved this thing.
Oh,
Not
excellent.
not so much in terms of personality profiling, because I think whenever we try to do that, it's just it's a flawed system right from the start.
Yes,
But this is
yes.
called an Enneagram. It goes back a long way. And when I say a long way, a couple of 100 years, on actually
Yeah.
more than that,
I've
in the
actually heard
ancient.
about this. Mm.
Yeah. Now, I had never seen it before, never heard of it, knew nothing about it, in any way, shape, or form. Um, the an enneagram consists of a 9-point diagram in which each point represents a personality type. It's made up of 3 elements. The outer part is a circle, then it has a triangle and an irregular hexagon within it. And what's beautiful about this, it's got a little bit of numerology in it. It's got a little bit of sacred geometry in it. It's got a little bit of a little bit of a lot of things.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
coming from very, I'm not going to go into all of the deep meanings behind it, but it basically breaks you down into being one of 9 types. You can be the reformer, who is independent, goal orientated, innovative.
Yeah.
You can be the helper, intuitive, unifying, influential. You can
Yeah.
be the achiever, communicative, artistic, charming, individualist, practical, loyal, service orientated.
Hmm.
The investigator, curious, adaptable, sociable, loyalist, supportive, protective, romantic, an enthusiast who is spiritual, curious, and analytical. And I love, love, love that spiritual and analytical are in the same freaking bucket.
I do love that.
Because
Yes.
normally we just have to separate them and as if they're something different.
Yeah,
So that I
yeah.
think this is why I resonated. Um, 8, the challenger, is ambitious, karmic, and enduring. And that I made a little in brackets I've got here. That's the one that I got. So I'm bold,
Yeah. See,
dominating.
I'm
I'm
gonna
bold,
try to
dominating. What
find
is
an Enneagram test to take.
Yeah, so I was bold, dominating, and confrontational, decisive and confident, often successful in leadership roles. Sometimes can be seen as domineering and aggressive, and I'm outspoken and action orientated. And the last one is the peacemaker, who is awakened, bless you,
Thank you.
awakened, tolerant, and supportive. Now, this is why I love this one. So everyone needs to have a bit of a look. See, when you look at this, those numbers do not go around the outside of the circle in numeric order. They are well, they do, but they go clockwise. 9 is the top, and number 1 is like in the number 1 position on a clock. If you understand, 9 is in the 12th position, 1 is in the 1 position. It works on the fact that by breaking that up into triangles, you have the support of the ones next to you. So if I'm a natural born, whatever I was, what did I say I was? Can't even remember what I said I was. I was the challenger, which is number 8. I've got the peacemaker on one side of me and the enthusiast on the other side. But then it actually, with the triangle system, because it's all intersecting triangles, you can actually see what opposes you and can support you.
That
So
sounds like the elements as well. Like,
it is.
which ones complement and fight each other. Yeah.
Oh, I just loved it because you've got one is the intrinsic center, one is the feeling center, and one is the thinking center. So effectively, we've got body, spirit, mind. So it's talking about heart types, head types, and body types. So again, it is looking at things more holistically, and it does reference Pythagorean numerology to a certain degree, but I reckon everyone should have a look at this one. I absolutely adored it. What
I
I did get
like
about
how the quiz is like you've got a timer on it and that it's just like agree or disagree. Like there's
Yep,
no spectrum. It's very, yeah.
yeah, and this one actually talks about what your fears are as well. So it doesn't look in just in terms of your core emotional motivations. It also looks into your fears, and it gives you a way to overcome them. Now, when I looked this even further, there was this fascinating, fascinating man called George Gurdjieff, who was from 1867 to 1949. He revolutionized something that was called the fourth way tradition.
Mm.
And it was like a semi-spiritual kind of movement that went, that came out of there. He's often associated by developing a system. He uses this system, but in a completely different way, not from personality profiling. And he goes in fascinatingly, if anyone wants to look into that, it's a pathway to awakening your consciousness. And he's talking that basically what we're dealing with normal day to day is just merely a form of sleep, and we actually need to wake ourselves up to what's going on around us. And
Right.
and he developed a method of dance. And if you look it up and you see the fourth way, if you was to look up the fourth way dancing, he based it on Tibetan spirituality and some other Eastern practices. And
Mm.
he used a system very similar. If anyone seen OA, and you look at them doing their
Oh,
dancing in
yeah.
OA,
Yeah.
it's sort of like his method is more like Tai Chi if you look at it, but it's got that kind of that bit of movement in it that's just supposed to unlock parts of our body. I loved this. I literally loved it. I thought, oh, I really have to look more deeply into this one because I felt like it was just truly too fascinating for me.
What did
And
you
I
get
I,
as an Enneagram?
I got the 8. I'm an 8. What did you come up with?
I'm just getting my results.
So yeah, I'm ambitious, karmic, and enduring, and I can be a little bit overpowering. And
Huh.
my greatest fear, apparently, in a type 8 personality is to be powerless. So they focus on controlling their environment. Now, I find this is, why I think this is really funny today? If you remember,
Right.
my card in my oracle deck that I've created is about control and chaos. Like that is exactly what my power
Really?
structure is about. So I'm like, how fascinating is that? That it directly correlates. I'm trying to find my card here, just so you can see that I'm full of shit. It just
So
says about
interesting.
controlling chaos. That's what the card is: controlled chaos and perfect balance. And that's exactly what that personality type is about. It needs to control their environment. I couldn't think of anything that was more me than
Oh,
that.
that wanted me to pay for it.
Oh no.
No, now I'm gonna have to start again. So make sure when you're doing these to find free ones. God
Oh, I
damn.
found one that it wanted me. I just got it on my phone, and then it wanted me to pay for the full documentation of it. And I
Oh
went, "I'll
yeah.
go it." This is the problem too. And this is with anything like this, whether it's pseudoscience, science, or spirituality. People are making these bloody quizzes. They're making all of these things so that everyone can all of a sudden get this supposedly in-depth analysis. And there are people out there that are actually taking that on board and thinking that there's giving it more credence than it deserves. I'll say that. People are giving it more credence than it deserves.
Yeah. Oh, god
And
damn.
interestingly, you've got in terms of this one, when I was talking about that, it talks about your fears. The mind part of the which is 7, 6, and 5, they are fear based. The 9, 8, and 1, which is the intrinsic center, which would that be? Thinking center is brain, feeling center is heart. So the body is anger or rage is what they feel the most. And if you go into the feeling center, it's shame is their strongest negative emotion.
That's very interesting, isn't
So,
it?
so I love that. While you're looking for that or doing that, I'm going to quickly go into the DISC personality profiling.
Yeah.
This is
Yep.
the last really big one
I
that I've got to
am
do.
listening and engaging. I'm just going through these 11 pages to find out the anagram.
You need to know. So the
I need to know.
DISC personality profiling is a really funny one as well, because it can be spelt DISC as in capital D, a lowercase I, capital S, capital C, or it can be all uppercase. Now, this is where it's interesting because people sort of like one person invented it and had his way of defining what the DISC personality types was, and then people didn't like it because it had some negative connotations, and they've basically rewritten it and have different lettering. And a lot of people out on the internet haven't realized that there's two different systems out there, and because people just copy paste and make their new, own handouts. The original system, which is all in uppercase, was about the D stood for dominance, active use of force to overcome resistance in the environment. So this
Hmm.
was basically trying to see how you would respond to environmental factors. Would you be dominant and try to just make it work?
Hmm.
Would you use inducement? So you would use your own charm to get what you wanted to overcome said obstacles. Would you be submissive? And would you be basically warm and voluntarily accept other people's help to get the problem fulfilled? Or would you be compliant and you would just basically be fearful of adjustment and hope that someone else would work it out? That was the original,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
original. So dominance, inducement, submission, and compliance. But then they invented a new one, because obviously I can't imagine going into a workplace and saying someone, "Oh, you just use your charm to get what you want and you're pretty submissive," and all you do going, I don't think anyone's going to love that.
No.
I don't think there's a win. There's no win-win in that. So they reinvented it to be the four main personality profiles were dominance, stayed the same, but I turned to influence.
Yeah.
So they need, so what they're saying is an I-based personality is more open and places emphasis on relationships and in influencing or persuading people. Whereas the D still just likes to confidently lead and everyone just has to get on board and we'll get results if you trust me on this. Um, S is for steadiness, dependable people that place their emphasis on cooperation and sincerity. And C is conscientiousness, which is emphasis on quality, accuracy, expertise, etc. So again, this one is a huge one, Tay, in terms of businesses paying millions of dollars around
Yeah.
annually to
I
have people
find
come
that
in.
really interesting that they use personal profiling to sort of pick and choose who they're going to employ. And I mean,
Mm.
it's kind of smart, but then you kind of like, how reliable is it? You know, like,
Not
are we judging more on what type of person they are, or are we judging more on their work experience? Like,
they've
you know,
this
it's a
this one
bit
still be
iffy.
deemed pseudoscience, but it basically just talks about people being in, you know, in a circular reference of whether they're outgoing, people orientated, reserved, or task orientated. Um, again, outgoing, reserved is just another name for introvert, extrovert in their definitions of how they're doing it. And I think task orientated and people orientated would be very similar to feelings based and thinking based.
Hmm.
Um, so they're not really doing anything groundbreaking, but there's
And it
people
comes.
they spend a lot of money on this annually to get defined as whether you're, you know, a D, I, C, or an S, and how then you work and within an organization. Studies have shown that it is highly accurate in terms of being able to be replicatable. If people do the same set of questions or similar set of questions, they will almost always come out in the same kind of position on this map as to whether they're more aligned to being a D or an S or whatever. But in terms of it actually showing whether someone would be good to do a particular role and how they manage situations, it's been shown to be highly inaccurate. Just thought I'd go there for all of those people that have spent
Yeah, well, I mean,
multi-million dollars on
they,
this system.
yeah, and they're obviously going to prioritize the types that fit in with their ethos. And, you know, again, we're on that morality spectrum a little bit, but we're adding like the caveat of professionalism or whatever to it, you know, like it's a
And,
vetting thing.
and obviously there's no better trait in terms of looking people as a whole, but I would think someone who's very accurate and compliance driven would be good for someone who's running numbers. Like, whereas if you're in a sales team, you want to have them to be results orientated. But if you're, you know, as a nurse, I would hope that you were people orientated. Like, I hope you were about
It's
being
so
sort of,
funny you say that because there are a lot of professions like, you know, nursing and stuff like that where you would think that they're people orientated or whatever, but it also depends on the systems in which they're employed. So you get a lot of people in these professions that are more worried about the check boxes than they are about the person that the check boxes apply to. And then again, there's that moral judgment and stuff of, oh, well, you have 3 beers a week, like you must be an alcoholic, or, you know, like it's
yeah.
but it's hard to remain impartial in those situations. So I suppose doing a
I've always said
personality
this.
test on someone, it would be like, oh, how caring are you? You know, like
Yeah, well, I've always said
how
being
suitable to this role
jo-
are you? Mm,
being a person who spent a lot of time in hospitals when I was younger,
yeah,
and didn't get much exposure to many teachers, I was able to form my own conclusions that teaching and nursing especially were places that some people go in there and it's their job,
yeah,
and you really don't want that. They'll do their job, but they won't do much more than their job, and that's
yeah,
fine.
exactly.
It'll
Yeah,
keep you alive and it will teach you stuff. But then you have the teachers and the nurses that where it's a calling,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they are like heaven. They're like angels to you.
yeah,
And I had teachers that would come to my home to give me work because they knew that I loved, you know, certain subjects, and they went above and beyond, as did some of the nurses. And
yeah.
I think if you can get one of those that's got a calling for it, well, you've been blessed. Is just what I'm going to say. The last thing I'm
Yes.
going to do while you're finishing off your thing,
I'm on the
and this
last page.
is all I'm going to talk about is we cannot, but we'd be remiss not to discuss criminal profiling and the FBI
Yes,
profiling.
because this was a pseudoscience back in the 70s and
Pseudoscience, and
whatever
you know what?
until it became a full thing. Yeah.
It is a full thing, but you know it. It still cannot reach past being a pseudoscience. It is not provable in any
Mm.
way, shape, or form. And some of the statistics that are thrown out by the FBI are questionable, to say the least, as per Wiki.
As per
So as
wiki.
per the really reliable
Yeah,
source,
the
of wiki,
really, yeah.
reliable source. But what I wanted to what I found really intriguing was they believe the first type of FBI criminal profiling was in the lovely book, the Malus Maleficarium, the Hammer of the
Oh
Witches,
my goodness.
was the first time they basically started looking at physiological profiles for the alleged witches. They
That's actually
told you
very
what to.
interesting. Yeah, yep.
And I find this fascinating. And I've actually got a quote from it. They were basically saying that it claims that women were more susceptible to demonic possession due to their lack of physical and spiritual strength and their promiscuous nature.
Oh,
Many women
yes.
accused of witchcraft acted outside of gendered expectations, including being isolated from society, having a strong personality, or merely being poor or elderly. So these were people
Yeah.
that were profiled as being most likely to be a witch
Which
because
sounds
of
more
that.
like criteria for execution, like, oh, they don't meet our expectations of societal norms. They must be
No,
witches.
no, exactly. It sounds like someone's got an agenda and they're going out of
Yes.
their way to get that agenda.
To make it, yeah,
E- um,
absolutely.
the wonderful Edgar Allan Poe also
Love
touched
him.
on personality profiling in the Murders of the Rue Morgue, where he
Mm.
used the method of trying to paint a psychological portrait of a killer. Um, and there's lots of different people that have worked on it through time. Even Charles Darwin worked on the expressions of emotions in humans and animals, where it contained detailed explanations of manifestations. There's lots of people that touched on this. If everyone hasn't seen a Manhunter, it was a great series. I really loved it actually. There was
Is that the one on
ta-
Netflix?
yeah,
Yes, I loved it too.
loved it. An Italian psychologist, Cesier Lombroso, studied this in an attempt to classify people. Unfortunately, he was one of the first people that started really going backwards with this technology or this science, and he put it down to literally, unfortunately, face, eye defects, peculiarities in the size of your facial structure. I don't know if you saw any of that research where he actually looked at symmetry of the face and
Mm.
and put that down to criminal aspects. So they basically tried to photograph a whole bunch of criminals and then worked out the fact that that was the trait on their face indicated they were more likely to be a thief or a murderer or whatever.
That is
And
very interesting, but also,
and it also looked at in terms of they were trying to see if they could visually look for insanity. Problem we got here obviously is our prisons are filled up with people that have socio-economic reasons as to why they're in a prison. So
yeah.
it's not. Um, but this is when I've got here. I've actually got in big bold writing. In 1999, the percentage of accurate criminal profiling was estimated to be at 21%, whereas in 2020, the accuracy was estimated to be 86% based on America's FBI, Quantico records, etc. I've got in big, bold writing, I call bullshit. Because
Yeah,
if you could estimate to a level of 80 to 86%, that will become a science. I think you need 85% predictability to be starting to become a science, and it's just not there. So anyway, it was interesting to me because it led us on to the personality profiling of the dark triad, which I have mentioned before in terms of the
yes,
Machiavellianism.
yeah.
Now, I did do a Machiavellianism test, and unfortunately, I'm highly Machiavellian,
Machiavellian.
which means the other two things that go with Machiavellianism, unfortunately, is subclinical narcissism. I think
Oh
that's
my
hilarious.
god.
Subclinical narcissism and just general subclinical being a psychopath. Psychopathy is, I think, how you pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So not only do I have a grandiose pride and egotism, and I lack a little bit of empathy, or I could.
you
I haven't
lack a
done a
little bit
test.
of the empathy.
Just lack a little bit of the empathy. I can also being a psychopath is characterized in this one in terms because it's non-clinical, it's not clinical, antisocial behavior, impulsivity, selfishness, callousness, and I have unemotional traits. Now, let's be clear, everybody. I only tested myself for Machiavellianism, right? I didn't test myself for narcissism and any times for being a psychopath. It's just saying that high scores in these areas do suggest statistical likelihood to commit crimes, cause social distress, and create severe problems for organizations. And I go for that. Got to keep the man honest, I say.
Keep
Where
the
would you be,
man
Tay, in all of
honest.
that?
I have no idea.
You tested low as in Machiavellianism, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh, I think it was only like a couple of points under you, but yeah, it was lower.
Yeah. Everyone in
Yeah.
our family test high in the Machiavellianism, and I think that was just more because we answered honestly. Because as you remember from me talking about that, the Machiavellian instance is sometimes just being logical, and people don't want you to be logical. You've got to be like humane, or you've got to like have all of those emotions running through you and make decisions based on that. But
Yes.
anyway, the last one I've got, and you can actually just talk about this without having to look up, was the fact that the
Well,
zodiac
yes. Well,
age old.
my Enneagram, I did the test, and
What are
again,
you?
it didn't say. It said test results, and then it wanted me to pay for an 18-page report thing.
Oh,
I
oh
did it
well.
on that Truity. So
Yeah, you're gonna have to come back to us
I'm
and
gonna
tell
have
us
to
what you
come
are.
back to it. Apologies for me looking down the entire time. Wasting
Okay,
fucking
zodiac.
time. So I didn't go too hectic on it because I knew if I tried to go too hectic on it, I would be here all day. We would be here all day. We, don't got time for that. So I pretty much was just like, I got another book, Astrology and Horoscopes. This one's a bit older. So things, and it's actually very blunt and straightforward compared to a lot of the stuff you read today about astrology. I think it likes to fluff up a little people that everyone's star signs and all that sort of thing. So this is a 1997 publication, but it's been pre-printed a couple of times. And I found the book itself to be great. It goes into each of the zodiacs. So there's 12 in general. And supposedly, according to astrology, when you're born, is aligned with a sign, and that sign is supposed to dictate your personality and how you relate to the world. We have other signs that we're more compatible with than not, and all this stuff. So,
and again, linked to the elements.
Yeah, and linked to the elements. So, for example, I'm born April 24th, so I'm a Taurus. Petra is also a Taurus, but she is a May Taurus. So even that, apparently there's a difference.
Oh yeah, we're hard hitting.
Yeah, apparently the true Taurian, I must just be a knockoff. But there's
you'll get there eventually.
No, I'll get there eventually. There's a stigma that Taurians are stubborn and all that sort of thing. And I actually detest that a little bit because I don't think I'm necessarily that stubborn. I'm probably strong-willed when it comes to certain things, but again, I'm quite a free-flowing person. I just have a line and boundaries on certain things where I'm like, nope, that's non-negotiable.
I am everything a Taurian is said to be.
Yeah.
I am stubborn.
Yep.
I so am stubborn because you know what? My way is usually the best way. And it would just save everybody a lot of time if everyone just came on board early on.
Yeah.
But no, I've got to dance around all of my women Geminis and Pisces and Cancerians in my house.
I grew up in a house of Geminis, so I can relate to that a little bit.
Takes a long time.
What I would say to that type of thing is that, again, where there's compatibilities and not with other signs, and we have in our astrological chart a whole other plethora of houses and planets, which, there's a whole astrological map that is laid out from the moment we are born, which pretty much dictates or predicts the energetics of our being on Earth. And so to limit it to the one sign is a bit narrow.
Yeah.
So I would say, and the easiest way to sort of go, oh, well, let's embellish on that a little bit. Let's figure out why you are more stubborn than I
Yep.
am. Is what are your sun and moon? What's your sun, your moon, and your rising? And pretty much the moon is like your introspective self, your
Mm-hmm.
emotive self. Your rising is how you appear in the world, like your external self. And then your sun is like your core nature. Um, so
I have no idea. My daughter has done that for me many a times, and she
yeah.
just all I get is a lot of as if it explains everything. Like if she goes,
No, that's funny. So for me, I know mine and I know my kids and I know Tim's. And I always find the memes funny because it's like, Mum, she rang me up and wants to know what my birth date is. So you can find out the partner's signs, because I've done that to like everybody. And literally I had one of my best mates and he texted his mum and was like, yeah, Mum, what time was I born? Tay wants to know. Um oh, it's a fairy wren. But mine is so Taurus sun, because I'm born in April. But because of the time and the place and the where I was born, my moon is in Cancer. So Cancer is emotive. They
yep,
get, water signs are notoriously sooky, apparently, emotive, intuitive. Like there's already these predestined traits for each of the elements associated with the zodiacs and stuff like that. But Cancerians are highly family orientated, which I would say I
yes,
definitely am. And being a more emotive sign and in the moon shows how I relate to other people. So I really value my community, my family, and I really take it to heart how I am seen, which might make me a bit of a people pleaser. But, that can be either supported by my Taurian inner nature, which goes, no, I'm drawing a line. I'm setting
yep,
a boundary. I love you, but I love myself too. And that's why I need to do that. Also relates to the fact that I am a little bit material. I am a little bit physical. I need more than a word. I need action.
yep,
If you're going to charge, do it. Don't just talk shit.
yep.
And then my rising is Virgo, which is how I appear in the world, sort of thing. It's like my first house. So Virgos, and it's funny because we're having a new moon in Virgo, and I did a little post on Instagram earlier being all like, we view the moon phases through the lens of the zodiac, which can mean different things to different people. In Virgo,
Yep.
it can either be the purity, the innocence, the maiden, this, the spring, the
Yep.
renewal, the fertile, or it can be the sovereign, the royalty,
Yeah,
the
because I thought, aren't they like Virgo's very like
yeah,
perfectionism?
perfectionism. You
Yeah,
can be very detail orientated,
yeah,
organized, but it also borderlines into OCD. And I
yeah,
think there's a shadow and light spectrum with the zodiacs as well. Like for example, let's flip forward to the Virgos, because I've read this whole book up to the point where it comes to constructing chart, which is a whole bloody art in itself. So
well, that's the thing. And I think anyone who poo-poos the zodiac is because they're
yeah,
reading it. Then there's a lot more to it,
there's a lot
and
more to
it
it.
takes
Yeah.
years and years and
It
years of
even goes
training.
into your planetary influences. So,
Yeah,
for
it's not as simple as
example,
people make out. Look, I
my
suppose the thing I have a problem with is I just don't like the concept if I'm as a little baby and I've just been born in, a hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it
yeah,
is the
yeah,
assumption that the people that were born in the same hospital in one room next to me
I gotta
will
be the
have
same.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Which
That's where I just have a little bit of
comes into
there's got to be more to it that
nature
we don't
versus
understand.
nurture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So which again, a guide. It's not a fixed thing.
Yeah.
It's more of a guide. Yeah, this is your base energetics, but we can grow from here.
I want to see what I've written for Virgo in my little book that I've got
So
here.
it says typical traits. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but typically shy and modest, hardworking, practical, yet perhaps rather dull. They have a well-developed tendency to criticize both themselves and others and often allow this to go too far. If a positive tenor is applied to Virgoian traits, it results in someone who works hard, is sensible, intelligent, and very good at detailed tasks. Virgoians are not interested in taking the lead, but more in completing a task to best of their ability. It is likelihood that Virgoians will be warriors, often worry about nothing at all, which can be misconstructed or counterproductive. I mean, I relate to a lot of that. I will take a leadership role if necessary, but I would most often rather be supportive. Their positive qualities are their best tools to deal with such problems. Virgo people are nearly always worried about something, and I think that's the perfectionism, because it goes ensure perfect results every time. And I see this in my daughter. Both of my daughters are Virgo sons. Erica is a Capricorn moon and a Leo rising, which really speaks to the Leo rising, especially her outgoingness. She is just magnetic. Everyone loves her. She is like such a popular kid, which is totally opposite to what me and Tim were as kids. And then Jenny, funnily enough, she's the same, but her rising, I think it is in Cancer. So like it's funny because they're similar traits, but each has little caveats that make them different. Virgo people are pliant and adaptable. Virgo people can be very shallow at times. Superior types are notable for their selfishness. And I mean, I have critical judgment, and I have seen that. In myself, I recognize a capacity to be that, and I probably convey that in the way that I communicate sometimes, but it also comes down to the fact I'm incredibly awkward. So sometimes it's just better for me to say what's on my brain than to try and pussyfoot around something, even though I can be very emotionally considerate. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, we'd be here all day if I went into every star sign.
And it's so much detail. But
there are a couple of prejudices I have towards certain signs. Taurian males and Libran males, I don't know what it is. They're just dickheads. I grew up with a man who was a Taurian male, and he was an absolute nod. He was totally opposite to what I was, like maybe more of the negative connotations of Taurus than me, like the stubbornness and not wanting change and being material and all that sort of thing. I did not know the rest of his chart at the time. I was quite young, but then also Libran males, and it's funny because those two signs are both ruled by Venus, our ruling planet. And planets are also another thing too, like the planetary positions of when we were born influences how we are. So, in the example of Venus, my Venus is in Gemini, which means I'm incredibly expressive in how I communicate myself to other people. And that really comes through in how I show affection, or in relation to other people, how I want to connect to other people, because Venus is like the planet of relationships and love and all femininity and all that sort of thing. So but the Libran, I have a friend who is a Libra, and she is not a dick, but Libra males, it's like, what is wrong with you? Like, did you just miss out on all the positive traits of your sign? Because that's what it looks like. Like, this is not a gender thing. You're just being a dick.
I must admit, I don't know them enough, and I don't think I've ever said to someone, "What star sign are you?" Like, I don't think it's anything that it comes up in conversation with me. What I did find when I quickly looked at the zodiac, again in categorization, I didn't even realize that it had links to bodily parts. I didn't know that.
Yes, it does. I bought a book on that recently.
And obviously, we're not going to talk about that now because you and I need to go that in a different episode. But I didn't know that, and this is where the things are, which is what I've loved about doing these podcasts. And we've is that you look at one thing and you go, "Oh, I didn't realize," and then a whole world opens up in front of you.
Opens up. Well, the Taurians, it's like head and neck, which makes sense for me because it's like supporting the horns,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love everything about being a Taurian. I don't know what my risings are and all that. And I'm like, I don't need to. I don't need to because I'm
Well,
so
you if you enter like your birth date and that, you can get like charts online that will just tell you all of everything. And I don't read the whole chart unless it comes up in conversation. I'm like, oh, what is that? And I read it and I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Like, I'm not a naturally angry person. I do get frustrated and overwhelmed quite a bit. Like and that's probably the source of my anger a lot of time is frustration, overwhelm. But in an astrological thing, like my Mars is in Aries. So if I'm gonna get angry,
you're gonna
and
go off
I'm
tap.
gonna go off tap, and I have done that. I have done that in the past, and it has not been fucking
It's not
pretty.
pretty.
No, no, no.
No. Okay, so what do we come down to from all of this? We it's an amusing thing to
Hmm.
look into, I think. I think it's amusing and it's funny to like do the quizzes and the tests
Well, do you want
and
to
see
know
what you come out.
my little points that I made?
Yes, I do.
There's one that we didn't get to talk about, but it's too long to talk about now. Human design, that's very new, also based in astrology by the looks of it, and numerology and things.
Oh, yeah, that's the one where I got the manifesting generator.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I was a generator, which was
So
like apparently
what is that?
70% of the population are generators, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be like everyone else. I want to be unique. I'm just going to go back to being a Taurian with a rising fucking Virgo and a Cancer moon. Thank
I
you.
must admit, I haven't heard about that one. I haven't heard, but it's like a lot of these systems because you got the ones that are more for business environments
Yeah,
and trying to
yeah.
look at from a scientific
Point of view.
perspective. So you've got
Yeah.
the disc and you've got the Meyer Briggs and you've got the oceans and the 5 phase. Even the FBI profiling it's supposed to be based on a level of science by
Yeah,
analyzing it.
yeah.
I will still state that from what I've researched, I still think Jung was so far ahead of
Mm,
all of these bastardizations of his system,
mm,
because he looked at things as not being quite so. It wasn't. We seem to make a method of categorization that we have to put
mm.
people in a bucket. They have to. We have to.
Yes,
And,
yeah.
and I think the concept that we actually fit into that bucket, and I know myself, I might fit into that bucket on Monday, but by Wednesday, I'm in a completely different
No,
bucket.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
My world has
I don't think
my
these
world has
personality
changed so much. And
tests really make much room for evolution, apart from the fact that if you're someone who is completely oblivious to your own nature, it might provide a baseline of getting to know yourself a bit better, or being all like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Maybe I'll look to see how
exactly.
that's actually exhibiting in my life. Because the points I wrote down in my very short list of notes for once was self-gnosis,
Yep.
self-diagnostic. So again, people going, I just do that because that's what the quiz says,
Yep.
not an excuse, can change or improve if desire is strong enough, provides baseline energy or portal for exploration.
Yeah, and I agree
Yeah,
100%. So I think
yeah,
any of these, the ones that are pseudosciences and the ones that are just completely, out there from a spiritual sense in
yeah,
terms of the
yeah.
enneagrams and the
And I think
astrology,
that's a
etc.
lot of it is based on personal growth and development and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
use it as a way to actually stop and take a moment to reflect
yeah.
and actually analyze how and why. And so these questions in a lot of these tests are designed to make you think about how you would answer it. And
Yeah,
and in
yeah.
doing that, it's not actually always just I think the benefit is not in how you answer the question. It's the benefit of what goes through your mind when you're trying to work out
When
what
you're
your answer
thinking
would
about
be.
it, yeah, not necessarily the result. And I
The
think you can
result,
disagree with the result too, or
yeah,
even the
exactly.
questions. It's like, okay, look, I pretty sure I thought I was more Maleficent and not a Snow White, but
But
righto. Yeah. Facebook does not know you. It just knows your data. So,
yeah,
take
ex,
that
ex,
into consideration.
yeah, 100%. But it
Easy,
was an
yeah.
absolutely, I think it was a fascinating topic. It led
Definitely.
me it led me into so many things that I have to research more that I'm not going to talk about here, but just so many things. And I didn't realize where things in terms of humorism and Carl Jung's color profiling actually were linked. I did not know any of this stuff. So there's so many things that I have to investigate.
It all interweaves.
It all interweaves
and I think that's the
beautifully.
thing too. Like everything connects to everything at some point, and that it's a spectrum based thing, not necessarily a set and forget. You know, it's not as binary as these, and it, you know, taking into account your own morality and how you feel you would react in certain situations and things, as opposed to how you would actually react. Like those are big takeaways to self-gnosis. Like that's how you're going to get to know yourself better.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
And what are we doing next week? And next week is the last one we're doing for a while. We're taking a break while we work out some new topics to discuss.
Last episode for season 3.
Yes, and we're going to be working on a lot of amazing courses that we're trying to get some of this information locked down while it's still fresh in our brains. So we've got some amazing things that we're going to be offering. But the next one is light language and the 7 rays. I'm coming at this one having no knowledge of it. None at all.
I know about light language. The 7 rays is a new thing, and quite frankly, I think it's a bit woo, but let's just keep an open mind and see what comes up. You know, maybe it's spirituality evolving. Who fucking knows?
It will be.
Who knows? Yeah.
I think we need to talk about a cat.
I think we need to talk about a cat. Oh, well, as always, folks, curiosity may have killed a few cats because they were Libran males and they were dickheads.
Thought you were going to make them a commander.
No. I would say the commander come through and was all like, look at these dickhead Libran cats. Let's get them the fuck out of here.
We're going to need to do something about this.
Find me some Taurens, please. Find me some Virgos. Some Pisces, shit. Just ones that don't cry all the time. But there is no growth in ignorant bliss.
There is none.
So have fun with your personality quizzes. But,
yes, and if you do any of them, please drop your results in the comments.
Let us know. I need to find an Enneagram that actually works.
It works. I'll find the one that I did.
Pay for it. My God, I wasted so much time on that. Literally, it's time wasting. If you've got time to waste, go and do a personality test. At least it might get something out of it, or you might end up disappointed and, you know, them asking for $20 to tell you shit you already knew.
On that note,
See ya next.
See everybody. Bye.